After I glanced over in my first YouTube video about live chat from triggers, I've got a lot of questions about how I actually built the bot and if it works somewhere else than just on live chat. And the answer is yes, it works everywhere where we have a trigger that is a customer reply trigger. You have a reply channel here with live chat, but that reply channel could just also be that widget, the standard widget, Facebook Messenger, GMB Messenger, and so on. So it works everywhere. Or you could at this point really just throw out the reply channel and just always trigger it on customer replied. But what that does, of course, is when you look at, it's really simple. You have a trigger that the customer replied, and then at the bottom, you send back the message. That's basically the bot. The question is just how do I figure out what the message is? In that send back live chat, it could just be send back a Facebook message. But if you don't use the trigger reply here at the top, if you don't use the filter for the reply channel, that would not characterize in what channel you have to reply. So what you would have to do is that you would then have to do an if then split up at this point here and determine what channel did the customer apply on, and then in order to be at the end to be able to determine where to send it back. I hope that that is clear, but it works on any channel. So you can either go and create separate workflows for each channel, which I would recommend you do because that makes it easier to debug it, or you can also put this in one workflow and then it becomes a very complex process. So the bot itself is very easy. Again, we have a trigger that the customer replied, and that trigger is triggered on the live chat. That could be SMS or Facebook or whatever you want it to be. And then at the end, it sends a message back on that channel. And you see message here, it says it's array functions, text value. The reason for that is because that's where the answer is stored at the moment. I'm going to show you this here in a minute. Now, if you want to have this workflow, I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually get the workflow in a snapshot because I realize not everybody is able to set this up themselves because this is fairly technical. Then you can, I'm not going to build a funnel, but there is going to be a Stripe payment link somewhere next to this video, and you can just pay me for it, and you will just have this workflow and also a model of how you set up the OpenAI side of it. There's two sides to this, of course. You have something in Highlevel, and then you need to set it up so that it actually builds the answer. And I'm going to show you that. What you need is you need an OpenAI account. And this is not ChatGPT. It's platform.openai.com/playground. And you need that account because you need to build a bot. You need to build an assistant bot. And you see here, there's assistants. That's where you build those. And I'm in the playground right now to test one of my assistants. And there's instructions here to that assistant. And you see here, it's a fairly long process, and it's structured. It's fairly structured. I have an introduction where it introduces itself. Then I have an initial greeting. I make sure that the bot itself answers the way I want it to answer. And then there are some rules that I set up, and then I have the conversation flow actually defined because I want the bot to go through the conversation in a certain way. And you see here I have it step 0A actually in this spot, and then step 1A, step 2A, and then I have a second flow where it goes through if there is different answers here, and it's actually the B thread that they go through, and you can have multiple threads in this. And then at the end I have some supplementary information like my company name or the mailing address, the phone number, email address, and so on. And then I also have a frequently asked questions section where questions that always come up and that the bot is bound to answer wrong if you don't have them, that it actually does that. And when somebody says it's the cost, and I say, well, go read the file service menu, MD, and that's your specific knowledge. And then you answer from that file, and you see here at the bottom, I have the service menu.md that is there, and that has additional knowledge that the bot should know. So I have a bot structure, and then I have additional knowledge, and you see here retrieval is turned on. And on the code interpreter, I have right now turned it off because I'm experimenting, but I usually have the code interpreter on as well. And then you can, of course, choose the model, and I use GPT-4 Turbo Preview. That actually affects the cost. If you go to GPT 3.5 here, you can just choose the GPT 3.5 model. It is about 20 times cheaper. And you see here, because of the length of the prompt, there is actually quite a bit of tokens that are consumed by this, and most of them are input tokens. You see the output token for this question here where I just said hi, and then it ran the instructions, and then it's basically the initial answer, and this is where you can actually test it. There's only 27 tokens, but the input token is 2,200 tokens. So that was actually, hi, this is Ann. That was about 2 cents when you look at the cost. It's a funny thing, OpenAI doesn't charge them all in this, but if you look at the list cost, that would be about 2 cents with GPT-4, and it would be almost non-existent with GPT 3.5. So what you need to do there is you need to test which way you want your bot to actually go. Now, if you want these instructions here, and they're very specific, that took a long time to get to this point. Looks easy when you have it, but it is not easy if you don't have it. As I said, I'm going to include something at the end so you can actually have a model that you can model yours around. So let's go back to the structure. Now, what you basically do in order to get, the customer sends you a message, and then you need to figure out, well, what am I going to say? Well, the way the bot first works, and you see there is 2 threads here. The way the bot first works is that on the first thread, it actually needs to establish a thread. I'll show you this here again. And I'm sorry, this video is probably going to be a little bit longer. To show you this here again, you see here there's a thread ID, and that's actually the test thread ID. If I clear this, see the thread ID goes away, and the first message actually establishes a thread. And that's what this is in this workflow. You have the first thread, and then you have every follow-up thread. Now, how does this work? Well, first of all, I'm going to count the messages. So what I have here is I have a math operation, and you actually created a field, bot runs, that is a numeric value, and it just adds 1 to it. And you see that's on both of the paths that it goes through here. It just adds 1 to it so that the bot knows it is in the first thread. And the condition up here is really, it looks if the thread ID is empty. And if the thread ID is empty, it goes to the first thread. So what you've seen there is, of course, 2 custom fields. One is thread ID, and the other one is the bot runs, or the number of bot runs for that specific bot. So on the first one, I need to create the thread. You see on the second one, I add a message to the thread. So how do I create a thread? Well, here it is. It's a custom webhook, and it's a custom webhook that uses a post method and goes here. So that's the technical side of this. You need to understand the Assistance API in order to set this up. And that's why you probably would want to have this workflow and just pay for it, pay to forget it. But you can also look through this, and it's not that difficult to do if you have a little bit of technical background. So you use a post method, and you actually post to the threads run with the bearer token, and then you see here I've set up a custom value for the OpenAI key, and that's basically your authorization. The headers always have to be there. There's one that's OpenAI Beta Assistant v1 that has to be there, and the content type is application JSON. And then the parameters, pretty defined. You need an assistant ID, and I'm going to show you this again. Here, this assistant ID is here. And so you have a custom value that we have set up is which one of the assistants am I going to ask? And that is contact, because maybe you have a lead, you want to address that contact with a different assistant than if it is a customer. And so this even allows you to specify the type of bot you want the customer be dealt with. And the role here is user, and you send the message body. What is this? Well, the message body is what comes up here. So the customer replied, I'm going to send the message body into the thread. It creates a thread with that message body, and it runs it. This is cool for the first one, and that's the call that's there. And then what I do is I get the thread ID back, and I actually save the thread ID. And what that does for the next run here, it actually sends it down this path. So I get the thread ID, I save it, send it down that path. And after a run, I have to wait a little bit, You can actually go and you can set this even shorter or longer, but OpenAI takes a little bit of time to actually give you the answer. Then you go get the message. Now let's look at this again. This is again a custom webhook, get the message. It is a get method to this URL here. And then of course you have the authorization, you have the headers, they're the same. And I want to have the last message back. So I'm going to query just the last message. With this call, you can actually get all the messages. But that's the advantage of the OpenAI Assistant. It manages all the memory keys and whatever. It stuff's in there. And then you get a certain response of that message. And you see here, in this case, and the response was, hey, this is Ann from Navigator Tools. And if you look at this over here, that's exactly what Ann would respond with. And then it gives you the assistant, the run ID, and that stuff back. And some of that stuff I save for future use. So then I get the message. The unfortunate truth is it doesn't just give me the message, it gives me a whole bunch of stuff. And what I do then here is I extract that message with array functions. So what you have here, when you look at the bot, how it is built with custom webhook, extract the message through the array functions, and then we're going to send the message. And the live chat message here uses array functions content 0 text value, and that's because that's how this structures the return. Now, this is the initial message, and the initial message is actually a little easier because I create and run the thread, and then I get the message and I extract the message and then send the live chat back. If the customer replies, then it goes down the follow-up thread, and then I add a message to the thread. And again, let's open this one here. And you see this is a post, and it goes to a different URL. And then again, authorization with the OpenAI key. And we have an OpenAI, the same headers than we had before, and we just add the message to the thread. Roles user, message body, just add it. That's when we add it, then because we already have the thread and we cannot do it in one command, we now run the thread, and it basically just runs the thread. And what you can see here is I'm actually giving that bot additional instructions because I want to book a time, and so I want that bot to have what's today. And that's one thing that you have to realize is these bots, if they don't have a way of figuring out what today is, they don't know what today is. And so when I run the thread on this, I actually give it additional instructions on the system side and tell it what is today, what is the time, what is the time zone that we're in, so that the bot actually knows where it's at from a time side. Otherwise, it can't book any appointment, right? And I wait for 6 seconds. I update the run ID so that I know what run that was. I get the message, and that is the same as up there. Basically, I just get the message, and it's right there. And this is actually where you see it is in content, text, value, 0. And that's what you see here at the bottom. I extract the message with the array functions. Let's open this up again. You see this is exactly the same thing that you saw over there. And I send it back, and it's array functions to content 0 text value. And that's basically how this bot is built. And again, if you want this workflow, you can, of course, build it yourself. But if you want this workflow, then you can get it with the payment link that I have below here. And anyhow, that's what you can get. If you also want to know how to build this, I'm going to have to do a different video to actually explain it. So that's going to be more expensive, but I'm going to offer you that as well. I'm not sure yet what the cost for that is, but I would do a different video actually explaining how to build a bot. So if you're interested on it, you should be able to build this yourself. At this, you have custom values that you have to set up, some custom fields, but it's basically a fairly easy workflow to set up. And that's basically what this bot does, and it basically just talks to a customer. So if you're interested in it, I hope this video helps. If you're interested in it, there's a link somewhere close to this video where you can actually purchase that workflow.